You know, with everything that is happening in our world right now, with everything that has happened just over the past week, we need to be able to stand in that place that says we are one human family. We were created in the likeness and image of love, and you cannot hold another in darkness and hold yourself in the light. That we must be able to hold one another in the light. If you truly believe that, would you stand and say, it can happen? It can happen. It can happen. It can happen. It can happen. It will happen. It is happening, and it begins with where? Me. Absolutely. Truly begins with each and every one of us. So that song, I think, really touches that. It sparks that within us because we know it is so true. Today we're talking about the power of imagination. And if you've been coming the last few weeks, you know that 6 weeks ago I started a summer series based on the 12 powers that Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, in studying different he studied different faith traditions, different religions, and when he studied the life of Jesus and the disciples that were attracted, the apostles that were attracted to Jesus, he began to realize that each disciple sort of characterized and embodied a certain quality. And as he began to look at those 12 different qualities, he realized that we embody those same qualities as well. And that the qualities are spiritual qualities. The qualities are neither positive or negative, but each and every one can be directed for purposes of good or evil. You see, in Unity, we teach that there's one power, just like electricity, and it can be used for purposes to illuminate this building or purposes to burn it down. It is we who are directing this power for purposes of good or evil. And so 6 weeks ago, we started talking about faith, and then strength, and then love and wisdom. Last week, Dan talked about power, and today, imagination. That it is truly something that we're always using, whether we realize it or not, that we all have the power to use it. The question is, are we aware of it, and how are we using it? I think about Garfield said this sort of as a play on what Mark Twain said. Garfield the cat said, "I've lived through some terrible things in my life, and most of them never actually happened." Can you relate? How much you've imagined? And, you know, it reminds me of that great song by the Temptations. It was just my imagination running away with me. Had your imagination run away with you lately? Yeah, we always do. Have you ever noticed at night? It's something, this is an interesting practice. When you wake up during the night, notice what is on the screen of your mind. Notice, is it something anxious about the future? Is it ruminating over the past? Are we making up stuff? You know, we really all are experts in making stuff up. When we don't know what's going on, have you noticed that you just sort of fill in the blanks and just make it up? And that at all times, we're living inside of the story of our life. It's been said that a human has two ways to see. We can see with our eyes, or we can see with our imagination. Our imagination, our inner eyes, and those are really the only two ways that we can see. And ideally, they're working together and holding the space for greater possibility. But so often with our imagination, you know, we use it in ways we don't necessarily want to. It's interesting, we're all born with this power of imagination. As children, we come out and we really know how to use our imagination. Children, up until the ages of 4 or 5, they're geniuses. I remember when I have a brother that's 14 years younger than I am, and when he was 4, I was with him one day, and we were outside, and this was in eastern North Carolina. It's when the dark clouds were coming up and this booming thunder. And he looked at me, and I said, "What was that?" And he said, "God's killing elephants." It's like, you know, that vivid imagination, it's kind of sounded like it, but, you know, so as kids, we all have that imagination, and then as part of the growth process, we begin to learn. And even though the word educate means to draw out, to draw knowledge out, there's a lot of stuff that's poured in, a lot of stuff that we have to memorize and learn, but learning will come to a dead end if we don't allow our imagination to continue to grow. Because if you look around every great invention, you look around this room, Look around your home, the chair, this podium. I don't know how many of you remember, but when I first got here, we had a giant podium, and I wanted a smaller one. And I sort of described it. I imagined it. I came in one Sunday, and Mike in the sound booth built one out of cardboard. And so it went from imagination to cardboard to real wood. Well, everything around here started in someone's imagination. Every great thing and every horrific thing has been born from imagination. And so this week, as we begin to talk about imagination, is begin to be mindful to the fact that we can't really separate our thoughts and our thinking from our imagination. It's sort of one and the same, that we are always imagining something. But is it true, and is it serving us? Or are we just making up stories? And is our imagination shutting us down? Is it causing us to get stuck? How many of you would do something except you imagine, gosh, I probably would fail. They'd probably laugh at me. We imagine all these reasons to shut ourselves down. So our imagination is either shutting us down, we get stuck in our story, or it's igniting our spirit to soar. There's a great story that really, to me, points this out, just the way our imagination works. It's written by Dave Barry, who's a professional humorist. He's a Pulitzer Prize writer. And this is what Dave wrote in talking about the stories of our lives and our imagination. Let's say a guy named Roger is attracted to a woman named Elaine. He asks her out to a movie, and she accepts. They have a pretty good time. A few nights later, he asks her out to dinner. Again, they enjoy themselves. They continue to see each other regularly. And after a while, neither one of them are seeing anyone else. And then one evening while they're driving home, a thought occurs to Elaine. And without really thinking, she says it out loud. Roger, do you realize that as of tonight, we've been seeing each other exactly 6 months? And then there is silence in the car. To Elaine, it sounds like a very loud silence. She thinks to herself, geez, I wonder if it bothers him that I said that. Maybe he's been feeling confined in the relationship. Maybe he thinks I'm trying to push him into something. Maybe he doesn't want this. And Roger is thinking, gosh, 6 months. And Elaine is thinking, I'm not so sure he wants this kind of relationship either. And sometimes I wish I had a little more space and there'd be more time for me. You know, where is this going anyway? Are we going to get married? Are we going to have kids? Does he even want kids? Wonder what our kids would look like. Do we really this? And Roger is thinking, so what that means is, let's see, February we started going out. Yeah. That was right after I took the car to the dealership, which means, oh my God, it's time for an oil change. And as he grimaces at the odometer, Elaine is thinking, he's upset. I can see it on his face. Maybe I'm reading this completely wrong. Maybe he wants more from the relationship. Maybe he has sensed like I've sensed, but he's sensing some reservations. And so he's reluctant to say anything. And Roger's thinking, and I'm going to have them look at that transmission again. I don't care what those morons say. This thing is still not shifting right. It shifts like a damn garbage truck. And Elaine is thinking, oh my God, he's angry. I can see he's getting angry. And I don't blame him. I'd be angry too. My God, I'm pushing him to something he doesn't want, but I can't help the way I feel. I'm just not sure. And Roger is thinking, they're probably going to say it's a 90-day warranty. This is exactly what they're going to say, those scumballs. And Elaine is thinking, you know, I've done this before. Maybe I'm too idealistic. I'm just waiting for a knight to come, like on a shining armor and a horse. Why is it that I want that when there's this beautiful man right beside me? Why am I waiting for a knight and a horse? And Roger's thinking, warranty. Yeah, they're going to want me to have a warranty, and I'm going to tell them to stick that warranty right up there. And Elaine says, Roger. And Roger is now startled and says, what? I'm such a fool, she sobs. I mean, I know there's no knight, and I know that there's really no horse. No horse, Roger says. You think I'm a fool, don't you, Elaine says. No, Roger, he knows the answer to this one. No, finally, glad to know the answer. It's just that maybe I need some time, Elaine said, and there's this long pause. Roger has no idea what she's talking about. He knows she wants an answer, and so he smiles and says, yes, honey. And she says, oh, you feel the same way too? And he says, yes, honey. And so now she begins to cry. He's not quite sure why, but he takes her home. And she gets on her bed, and she's conflicted, a tortured soul. She weeps until dawn. When Roger gets back to his place, he opens a bag of Doritos and turns on the TV. He becomes deeply involved in a tennis match between two Czechoslovakians he doesn't know. But there's a tiny voice in the back of his mind that says something was going on back there. I have no idea what it was. Probably never will. This is also Roger's policy regarding world hunger and world peace. The next day, Elaine will call her closest friend, perhaps two of them, and they'll talk for 6 hours straight. They will talk about what she said, what he said, how did he say it, where was he when he said it, did she really mean it, what did she think he meant. This will go on for weeks and even months. Meanwhile, one day Roger will be playing racquetball with a mutual friend that knows both he and Elaine, and he will say, Norm, did Elaine ever own a horse? And it just goes on. But you know we do that, right? Especially when there's that awkward silence or we don't know, we say something and we've really put ourselves out there and we don't get the response. We just make all of this stuff up. And I love that because it really points out the reality that we live in. That's why the Buddha said, the cause of all of our suffering is our thinking. And it's so true that we can think ourselves into a state of heaven or we can think ourselves into a state of hell at any particular time. And it's our imagination that is fueling those thoughts. And so today when we talk about imagination, we are definitely not talking about using your imagination in a way that is simply fantasy and ignores the facts. We're talking about using your imagination, remember, yoked with compassion, with wisdom, with all of these other qualities. We're talking about using your imagination, for example, like last week, when we read the paper and we hear on the news and we see on Facebook, it sounds like I've had several people say these exact words to me, our country is going to hell in a handbasket. Anybody heard somebody say that lately? Anybody said that or thought that yourself lately? That there's such frustration with literally ridiculousness of how we are fighting. And even in our presidential election, the stuff that is coming up, it's really very, very sad. And it's very disturbing. And so what the imagination does, it doesn't try to pretend it's not there. But the imagination really looks deeply until it feels it in the heart and allows the heart to be broken, allows the heart to become sad, allows the heart to be touched by, these are people, both the one we may call the perpetrator and the one we may call the victim, both are children of God, both are hurting, both are in deep pain. And to be able to see for both sides, you don't have to agree to still stand in compassion. You don't have to condone something to say you are still the child of God. And that's what we're here to do. Our world needs people to be able to stand and be that bridge, to be able to stand on both sides. And so this week when things like this come up, we allow it to touch us, to move us. And we see these facts, but along with the facts, we're able to also hold on to the truth. The truth is we are the likeness and image of God. Do you believe that? The truth is that God is love. The truth is that there is one power, there is one animating source, and that one spirit flows through all creation. The truth is we are created to honor one another, to cooperate. Our world, our ecological system depends on us being able to operate together. We're created to do this, and I know we have it in us. Do you? I know we have it in us. And so when we see those things that bring forth deep pain and anxiety, it's to look at it, to feel it. And then to also say, and it doesn't have to be this way. There is a higher order of living. And so in that place, we can allow our imagination to run wild and cause us to get stuck. It can cause us to awfulize. That's a real word, awfulize. Say it with me. Awfulize. And now don't do that. Don't awfulize. Then it's just like, oh my God, it's so awful. We just get going down that train. But we can awfulize and get stuck, or we can begin to actualize something greater. We can allow it to simulate and stimulate our spirit for us to bring forth something greater. So when we look at imagination, as I mentioned earlier, every quality is paired with a disciple, an apostle. This particular disciple is called Bartholomew or Nathaniel. It's the same disciple called by different names. Now, this disciple is one that another disciple, Philip, invited him to go actually meet this teacher, this great person he'd been hearing that was doing healings and things like that. And he wanted him to come meet this man named Jesus. But what Bartholomew said is, this man is from Nazareth. Has anything good ever come out of Nazareth? That's what he said. Now let's press the pause button a moment. Have you said recently, has anything good ever come out of fill in the blank? Can anything good ever come out of blank? But so the nice thing is, even though he said, can anything good ever come out of Nazareth? He didn't stop there. He clearly was making a judgment. You see, our judgments are what shut down our imagination. Because once we've made a judgment, I've made up my mind, period, that's in. I've placed you in that category. All those people are like that. I'm always going to see it like that. End of sentence. So often, unfortunately, we do that. But he said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? But he still went to investigate. He remained curious. And when he went and he got closer to this man named Jesus and began to talk to him, in the course of conversation, Jesus said, earlier today, when you were sitting under that fig tree and you were praying, and Bartholomew said, there is no way he could have known that. Because Bartholomew knew that Jesus was somewhere else, he was somewhere else. And so immediately he said, this man has a kind of vision that is greater than your physical eyes. And this man has a kind of vision that I want in my life. And so the promise that Jesus gave to him, because he said, you don't have to judge, even though you think maybe something good can never come out of that. He promised him, he said, you shall see even greater things. And he promised that he would develop the spiritual imagination. Well, you see, we all have that same promise. Because all of us, if you've ever experienced a real challenge in your life, we all know what it is to feel like, can anything good possibly come out of this? Now, I am not saying that everything is good, because everything is not good. There is hatred in the world. There are evil acts in the world. Those things are not good. But can good come out of everything? Yes. Even when something horrific happens, and we don't want something horrific to happen to tear our hearts open and bring out the good, but could it be that that's part of what's happening? Could it be that so many of us now are getting just feeling like this, that our prejudices are ridiculous? And if we don't think we have prejudices in our own life, we need to go deeper, deeper into our own lives. Heal me of mine. If there's any areas in my life that I'm thinking us and them, if there's anywhere in my life that I would leave somebody in the dark and put the others in the light, let me heal that bridge. That's what our imagination is calling us to do. So the first thing that we learn from this is to take a look at our judgments. Where do we have judgments in our life? And how are we being asked to really step beyond the judgments in our life? One of the ways you can do that is when things begin to happen. You know, the mind wants to make up that story. Go back to Elaine and Roger in the car. Just imagine if during that first moment of silence, instead of the mind going wild when he's silent a minute, what if she could have just said, well, that's interesting. And keep the mind open. That's interesting. That's interesting. And let the desire be to authentically connect heart to heart, to understand what they're thinking, to understand what they're saying, to make sure we're expressing what we're feeling. And so a great practice is to say, well, that's interesting. When you find your mind going off, I do that when I wake up at night. That's one of the times when I wake up at night, I can really see my mind has a mind of its own. And I begin to say, well, that's interesting. But most of that's not true, so let's reel yourself back in. So that's the first thing. It's just to begin to be aware, where do I have judgments? Where am I saying nothing good can possibly come from here? I'm labeling those people. I'm putting those people. I'm shutting my own self down. I'm limiting my own possibilities. When I run into those judgments, to say, well, that's interesting. But to keep it open, and rather than the door being closed, to allow it to stimulate the spirit within me to grow me. Because every great invention, every person that has ever transcended anything, anybody that has changed their life had to engage their imagination. How many of you have ever made a vision board? You literally cut out pictures of something that you wanted to happen in your life. Why do we do that? Because it allows us to see what is possible and to create that bridge for us to get there. So we let go of the judgments. The second thing is to look twice. A few weeks ago, I was driving to church one Sunday morning, and I came to a stop sign. And you know how we're always taught in driver's ed, you look twice. You look for a car, you look again. So I came up Sunday morning coming to church. I looked this way, and just started to pull out when, vroom, a car flew by me. And I stopped and I thought, wow, I'm glad I did what my dad taught me, look twice. And the next thing I thought was, I didn't think I had any blind spots. Anybody? That it's really true. I looked and literally didn't see it. So it obviously was in my blind spot. That's just not something we make up. It really happens. That's why we're taught to look twice, because we may miss it the first time. And I experienced it that Sunday morning. And I thought, how that translates to our spiritual life, how important it is to look twice. How many of you like to think you don't have blind spots? That we can see everything just right. We know the truth. We know how it is. Well, it's to just accept the fact we all have blind spots. And so what does it mean to look twice? There's a story in the Gospels where there was a blind man at Bethesda. And it says this man went to Jesus to be healed. And Jesus reached down and picked up some dust and formed 2 little balls of clay and put in the man's eyes and said, be healed. And the man, they took him out and he said, what do you see? And he said, well, I see men, but they look like trees walking. And Jesus said, look again. You see, the first time we look at something, we may not be able to see a clear picture. The first time we hear about something horrific happening, we may not be able to see there's something greater unfolding here. The practice to look twice reminds us to look at the facts, and then to look at the truth. What is the spiritual truth? Well, the spiritual truth is we are the likeness and image of God. The spiritual truth is that if any one person can practice and develop imagination, so can you. That we all are beings of great imagination. It's just, are we willing to be curious? There's a great true story about a man, Phil McCrory from Alabama. Back remember when the Exxon Valdez had the big oil spill? And he was sitting home. Phil was a hairdresser, and he was watching this, and he saw these otters in the Prince William Sound. If you remember that scene, just the otters soaking up all the oil. And he had a thought, if otter hair does that, what would human hair do? And it caused him to investigate. His investigation led to a patent which NASA uses today. What they discovered is 1 pound of human hair can absorb 1 gallon of oil in less than 2 minutes. And it was because one man looked twice. He saw it. He had his feelings about it. I'm sure he judged the company. But instead of stopping there, he went that third step. He looked twice, and then he thought, how can I be used? How can I be used for greater good? And an idea came to him. I think if there's ever been a time in our world that we need greater ideas, it's right here and right now. That there's something greater seeking to be born. And if it is to be born, it's going to be born from you, from us, from people in this world. You are here right now at this time in history because this is when your soul wants you here. You have gifts right now. You have an imagination right now that can help us imagine something greater. Richard, would you give us that song? So imagination, the first thing is to notice when we're judging and to just say, well, that's interesting. Remain open. To have that double vision. We can see the facts, we deal with the facts, but we also see that there's a higher spiritual truth, there's a greater possibility. And then to say, use me for greater good. Use me for greater good. Allow me to use my imagination. Our imagination is a very powerful tool. They did a study with children and where they asked children, they said, imagine you have your right hand in ice water. And they checked the temperature of both hands, and in every child, the temperature in the right hand dropped immediately. The power of imagination. We can use imagination to lower blood pressure. We use imagination for many things. Every creation, everything that has ever come through, comes through the imagination. Walt Disney was a man that had great imagination. He had many setbacks in life, but he also had imagination. What is imagination? Charles Fillmore in The Revealing Word says, imagination is the faculty of mind that images and forms. It gives shape to substance. Imagination takes the formless and puts it into form. The idea becomes a reality. That's imagination. Walt Disney had great imagination. Today at Disneyland, they say, Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination in the world. Now, there's a particular department at Disney that's responsible for this growth. Certain people with a particular job description. These are the people that say, we make the magic. They say, with one foot in the present and another in the future, we are the ones that continue to push the boundaries of creativity, innovation, and possibility as we create anew. Their job description is called Imagineer. Isn't that a fabulous title? An Imagineer. The Imagineer is with one foot in the present and one in the future. Imagineers continue to push the boundaries of creativity, innovation, and possibility as we create anew. And you see, all of us are Imagineers. All of us are created to be creative. And if there's anything that our world needs now, it is holy Imagineers. From the point of wholeness, that you can see the whole picture, that we're each and every one called to be Imagineer. J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter books, wrote, we do not need magic to transform our world. We carry all the power we need already inside of us. What we need is to activate our power to imagine a better world. This week, this idea could not be more timely, because what we need is to activate our power to imagine a better world, to imagine a better life for yourself, to imagine more freedom, more liberation, more living your divine potential. We're going to sing this song that we are using throughout this series to anchor this into, to really anchor it into our awareness as we go into a time of meditative prayer. Join me in Gentle Spirit. Gentle Spirit, flow in me. Gentle Spirit, grow in me. Gentle Spirit, show in me. Gentle